You are listening to Armchair Healthcare, a podcast on pills, placebos, and policy.
All right, welcome to Armchair Healthcare. What's up, Max?
Well, there's a couple things that are kind of annoying me.
Okay.
There's a couple pieces of news that were annoying me. So, like, Jose Beselga, who's the CMO of Sloan Kettering, had to resign from Sloan Kettering, as well as the boards of, like, Bristol and I think, like, Varian or something like that, because, like, ProPublica and the New York Times exposed the fact that his conflict of interest disclosures were improperly done in various journal articles.
Okay, and do you have a sense of the scale of this?
I think they said like 60% of the articles that he was listed in, and it was something like 180 articles in the last whatever how many years.
And was he getting millions and millions of dollars from these drug companies, I presume?
Well, I
or
think
other entities that were supporting him?
from what I remember, he was invested in some company that was bought out by Roche, and so he made like $3 million off of that. And so any stock sale within the last 3 years has to be disclosed in that conflict of interest.
Okay.
But in various publications, but every publication has a different standard or may have a different standard. And I mean, in the end, though, there was actually no evidence that he was doing anything actually improper. I mean, this is sort of the equivalent of, you know, when you're filing your tax returns saying that you have a 300 square foot home office when you actually have a 150 square foot home office. Like, yeah, you're technically doing something wrong, but who exactly is being hurt? What are you doing that's really wrong?
That's kind of fraudy. Like you're kind of okay, bear with me for a second. Don't look at me like that. And I'm going to come inspect your home office here in a little bit, mister. But that's kind of fraudy. You know, you're kind of misrepresenting something. You're kind of lying. This right here is like, I mean, he didn't follow the correct protocol for sure. Like he should have disclosed all his conflicts of interest. But if he wasn't actually doing anything that was going to affect, like, say, the stock price of Roche or whatever, I mean, those disclosures are just a canary. You know what I mean? They can point in the direction of, oh, this is something to be aware of, right? But they don't actually speak to any sorts of crimes in and of themselves.
No, and the most the articles alluded to was that he spun the data results a little bit more positively than some people on the street. So it was all very amorphous kind of stuff. It wasn't very clear that, I mean, first of all, at all of these conferences, they always try, I mean, unless they really just hate whatever they studied, they generally do spin it positively. I mean, I remember when I was at ASCO and they were presenting the Nivo and IPI data in melanoma. You know, these are, you know, two checkpoint inhibitors together, and everyone was like, they did a standing ovation. Everyone was like, this is revolutionizing medicine, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it really wasn't. If you actually looked at the data, Nivo plus IPI was just a little bit better than Nivo alone, and it was much more toxic.
Much more toxic.
And it would also be terribly more expensive, but they were getting a standard ovation, and all the people on the podium were like, woohoo, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is what they do. I mean, there's literally, he didn't do anything that was abnormal. There was no fraud.
I mean, I think it's the type of thing that probably should have been corrected in the record. He should have sent out some corrections, right? But this sort of character assassination seems to be a little bit much. Somebody who has done these sorts of disclosure before, like a bunch of times, I never really put much thought into them. Most people don't put a lot of thought into them. Like, I just put them at the end of my papers and sort of made sure that the various funding agencies got credit. In my case, was mostly like the NIH. But yeah, there's so many things like this out there in academia too. I don't think people completely realize that, you know, given that funding is just horrible everywhere for all of science, that a lot of it is supported by private industry nowadays, and we can talk about whether that's a good thing or not. But the fact of the matter is that places like Sloan Kettering are getting a lot of financing from industry, from pharma. And they're getting a lot of financing from, selling these clinical trials and stuff like that too. The fact that he didn't disclose this stuff, I mean, it's a faux pas, but I don't think it rises to the level of him having to resign and having a New York Times article about it.
And ProPublica. I was trying to put myself in his shoes, which is, you're this renowned oncologist trying to actually like save people's lives. Like, maybe, who knows? I mean, I don't know him personally. Maybe he's a schmuck. Who knows? But whatever. But you're saving people's lives. You're doing good. You're proud of yourself. And then one day you wake up and you see yourself all over these, like the New York Times, ProPublica, talking about how you did all this improper stuff. And you're just like, why are they targeting me? Why are they bothering? Well, I mean, did these reporters just like, hey, let's ruin someone. Let's go after this person and let's dig to see what he did wrong. Because I guarantee you investigate anybody, you will find something wrong. I mean, it's or you'll find someone who's claimed they did something wrong.
I've done nothing wrong.
Oh, I'm sure.
I've done nothing wrong.
You've never sped. You've never exaggerated your charitable deduction.
I got caught for speeding, and I did my service. I paid the fines.
See, you have a police record. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that is interested in this, I encourage you to listen to Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, Revisionist History, which actually just did an episode about just this sort of problem, where a bunch of scientists back in, I believe it was the 90s, had their characters assassinated because there were investigations into impropriety. And I think there's something about the idea of a fraudulent scientist, because they're supposed to be these pure, high-minded individuals, especially ones that are powerful, like this individual was, that really gets people going in some way and makes for exciting journalism.
Well, I think it's sort of like, some people believe that, the whole healthcare system is completely corrupt. And so this was kind of some confirmation that, oh, wow, he was getting all of this money from industry and he didn't disclose it. He's part of this corrupt system. So they automatically believe it and they love the article. Mm-hmm. I mean, and when he resigned, there were people, I think other journalists who were like, great job, to the writers. Like, so this is good. You're trying to ruin someone's life. Like, this is like a goal for you. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, it's the type of thing. He should have not been the chairperson for a while or something like that.
No, it shouldn't cost him anything. He should just correct the record, and like that's it. And I think he did correct the record in a bunch of them already, but he resigned. And of course, now the thing is, oh well, maybe there's something else going on. That's why he resigned. That's like, really? I mean, how are you supposed to disprove that one?
No, I mean, in those positions, I mean, it's really just your character and your personality that drives it. It's just you're trying to get people to come into the both professors and sponsors and patients and everything else to come to your facility. That's it. Yeah, I feel for the guy.
I mean, I think around the same time there was a story in the New York Times also about Nikki Haley's curtains in her office at the UN. How they cost like $54,000. Like there was this article in the New York Times, a picture of Nikki Haley, talking about these expensive curtains that she has in her office, and then they issued a correction saying, "Oh, well, we didn't, we think we went too far because speaking to current and former officials, those curtains were ordered under the Obama administration, so we might not have wanted to actually focus so much on Nikki Haley and also have her picture."
Can we talk for just a second about what a $50,000 curtain looks like?
Dude, it's the
government. I mean, they got it commissioned like years ago. I mean, was it like spun from spider silk?
No.
I mean,
look, they don't go to Home Depot, obviously. $50,000. I mean, it better have diamonds in it. That's all I have to say. Remember Sage Kelly, who's now at Cantor Fitzgerald? He was head of healthcare investment banking at Jefferies. It was all over the papers, stuff that was in the divorce filings of his, I guess, wife at the time or ex-wife or whatever. And it's like, guys, really? I mean, how all this is someone who's angry at him publishing accusations. there was literally no evidence in any of the articles I saw. It was all just these salacious stories written in the heat of the moment during a divorce, which people put all this sorts of stuff in. And this his character was completely assassinated, and he had to switch jobs. I mean, now he's doing really well. All you have to do is have a reporter talk to a ex-wife or wife or whatever, and there you go. You get some inquiring minds want to know kind of stuff.
Yeah, actually, at the time, my PM reacted very strongly to that. He was like, I could never work with somebody like that with that sort of character. And I was like, what?
But
This is New York City, baby. Yeah. This is how we roll with chicks and blow.
No, I thought it was mushrooms.
It was mushrooms? Okay.
And I believe there was alleged wife swapping.
There was
with
wife
a
swapping.
Yeah.
No, there was wife swapping with one of his clients. Now, is that a conflict of interest?
He's a banker. Isn't it all just conflict of interest?
I don't know the rules on wife swapping with your clients.
Anyway, so another thing that annoys me is the $250,000 fine for Pat Mahaffy, the CEO of Clovis. We previously had mentioned the $20 million fine that the company got because they over-exaggerated the response rate for one of their drugs. So the company had to pay $20 million. Pat Mahaffy, the CEO, only had to pay $250,000, and I think he makes like $8 million a year. So it barely even is a slap on the wrist, and I guarantee you his insurance covers it because he didn't have to admit any wrongdoing.
Yeah, I don't understand this mentality amongst prosecutors. This is important, I think, too. Like Clovis was successful, to the degree of which they've been successful so far. But they got a drug approved. Yeah, but
right? It was a different drug.
It's a different drug, but they got a drug approved, and it's selling, and the stock has gone up. And somehow since they're redeemed in the eyes of Wall Street, then they're redeemed in the eyes of law in a lot of sorts of ways. I mean, I think you see this a lot with the banking crisis, from 2008. I mean, the number of fines that have been levied at bulge bracket banks is just huge. Bank of America has something like $76 billion in fines since then.
Really?
Yeah. It's absolutely huge. And how much did the officers pay? The actual people committing the crimes. I mean, they just hold the corporate person accountable, but not the actual decision makers that are deciding to do crimes.
Yes.
Right.
And it's really easy to get the entity to pay the money because, well, first of all, the people deciding to pay the money, it's not actually their money.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't really care. They just want it to go away. And the shareholders are just, there's whatever, thousands, tens of thousands, whatever. So, none of them is especially necessarily hurt by the fine. And this is what happens.
Yeah, it's still unfair to them. I mean, they get screwed twice. They get screwed once on the fraud, and then they get screwed again when they have to pay the fine for the fraud. Now, I promise you, if this was not a successful company, they would, be going about this a bit differently. If this was, just imagine this was like a mom and pop drugstore or something, and they were defrauding people. They wouldn't hold the drugstore liable. They would hold the people actually doing it, mom and pop.
Well, the mom and pop store would probably be either a partnership, sole proprietorship, or something, not like a
sure. But you know what I'm saying.
C corporation.
You know exactly what I'm saying.
Well, Theranos. I mean, Elizabeth Holmes only got a $500,000 fine, and I mean they're a private company, but still
she still has another litigation going on, right?
Yeah, there's still criminal. I don't know if litigation, but at least an investigation still going on. I finished Bad Blood, and I mean, it wasn't even close to being legitimate. It was a fraud all the way through, forever. All they did was lie, and she obviously defrauded investors very, very clearly. So a $500,000 fine. I mean, and she had to give up some shares of the company. The shares of the company that are worth zero anyway. Yeah. It's like big whoop. What the heck?
Not to mention, these guys probably got so freaking rich and had so much insurance that they're not going to have to no one's going to really have to pay anything.
What do you mean, at Theranos?
No, not at Theranos, at Clovis.
Oh, Clovis. Oh, yeah, no, Clovis, yeah. No, they have insurance. I mean, the company has insurance because they didn't admit any wrongdoing. I mean, if they did admit wrongdoing, the insurance company would be like, no, we're not insuring you
for crime.
For crime, we're not in the business
crime
of that.
insurance.
Yeah.
There is that. There is that though.
Well, you have legal insurance.
Yeah, there is legal insurance, but it's also crime insurance. It's called the mob.
The mob?
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of the mob, I think Sorrento, was it Sorrento Pharmaceuticals? Sorrento Therapeutics.
Sorrento Therapeutics.
I think they just did a deal with the mob.
It's the craziest, most toxic debt deal that I've seen in the longest time.
It's literally insane. I mean, so they owe $224 million, but the investor actually only gave them $140 million. But then the net proceeds was $89.3 million because they had to deduct offering expenses, and then there had to be like a segregated reserve account. So they issued $224 million in debt and really only get $89 million.
Yep.
What the heck? And then, of course, there's interest rates, and the debt will go up if they don't hit a certain royalty number.
They have to pay a royalty on their drug.
Yes, the Zatildo.
It's not Zatildo.
Zadildo.
No, that's not it either.
It is the lidocaine topical system.
Yeah, it's like a lidocaine patch or something like that. I can't remember, but it's horrible name for this drug. This is like the worst named drug ever.
Pretty much. I mean, they put a Z in it.
ZTL is how it starts. ZTLIDO.
ZT Lido.
ZT Lido.
Well, it's
also
lidocaine.
Zitlido.
Yeah.
Also, no.
Zitlido.
Okay.
So when you pop them, it's not so painful.
No, Max. No.
No?
No.
You'd rather have Zadildo?
No. Stop saying that, please.
Anyway, it's just amazing. And
yeah,
why
the principal goes up if they don't meet certain sales milestones. They owe a royalty. They give up the drug if they don't pay it back on a certain schedule or something like that too. It's just
there's a lot of different covenants, and I mean, good news is the first maturity date on the notes is in 2026, so at least they won't go bankrupt for another 8 years in theory.
Well, I've been surprised how long this company's been around.
Yeah, it's
with
pretty bad.
Just sort of the sort of shuck and jive that they do with their assets.
I really don't understand why these companies do debt. I've argued with so many of them over the years, and they're always like, oh, I don't know, what's the big deal? It's non-dilutive. It's like, no, it's not really non-dilutive because you have to pay it back.
Yeah, you only have to pay interest on it. That dilutes you. It comes right out of your bottom line, so your EPS goes down.
Well, it dilutes the value of the company because you have to pay back this stupid debt. And I mean, as we saw with Eaglet, which, I was looking back, and 2 years ago, they issued 13% debt in order to pay back their 9% debt, definitely going in the wrong direction. And, in the interim, I think people think they're going to default, or they have defaulted, and their stock went from $7.60 to 10 cents.
Yep.
I mean, that's just, they had marketed products, but they have all this debt and they can't pay it back.
I don't know. I will push back on your idea that debt is just bad.
No, debt is good if you make money or you're close to making money. Because you have one trial failure or anything, something goes wrong, the FDA doesn't get you the labeling you want, and you're going to be done. I mean,
which is what happened with Eaglet, because they didn't get the labeling they wanted, even though they got an approval, and that was it. Yeah, they've been sort of floundering ever since then.
Yeah, and I remember this one company. It was Atherogenics. They had this really, really horrible drug for atherosclerosis. I can't pronounce it right now. It had a p-value of 0.986. And 6 months later, they had a convert due. And guess what? Because they failed, they had to pay it back with actual money. And they went bankrupt within 6 months of a trial failure. They didn't really have a chance. Isn't
there something to be said for just letting things die? The circle of life, Max. I mean, debt will kill companies, but it tends to kill companies
that deserve it,
that deserve to die, and.
That's true. Because otherwise you end up with, Zoma, which has never issued debt, is one of the original biotech companies that has never been profitable. It's been 40 years now.
Yeah, isn't there something to be said? But all right, if the thing doesn't work, we'll just declare bankruptcy, go out of business, start a new one up. I think it's a little bit of it's all just in name, and Zoma has managed to keep their name for the past 40 years. Nothing is the same there.
Oh no.
Otherwise, it's like that boat that you take apart one plank at a time, you put it back together. Is that better than just having a bankruptcy and there's moving on to something else? Might be easier to fundraise or something like that, but it's other than that, as far as like a sort of existential quandary, there's nothing wrong with debt. And sometimes things just need to die, especially when they're companies that can never make any money.
Yeah.
And it's lower cost of capital. So
Well, not if it makes you bankrupt.
Right,
That's
yeah.
a pretty high cost
And not
of
if it's like
capital.
13% and you only get 1/3 of the cash, like the Sorrento thing.
Well, also one thing that seems to be a trend in the VC world, or at least I heard this trend, I'm not a VC expert, there's a lot more venture debt done now. So like if you do a deal, a lot of it will be equity, but then some of it will be in debt. And it's like, these are really early stage companies and you're paying like a 13% coupon. I was talking to one company, they had raised like 20 million in venture debt, and they swear between the service payments and cost of refinancing probably cost them $20 million.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, what do they really get for it?
Well, yeah, it's just sort of like mezzanine debt to keep the doors open for a while they like execute on their ideas.
Yeah, but
that's how they frame it. And a lot of those are also, they're like credit card debt that also converts too. So if they actually are successful, these VCs can convert and get a sizable chunk of the company right there at the beginning. And I actually just read the Financial Times has a new article out just about how a lot of private equity sort of filled the gap after the financial crisis for new lending, and how that's just been a blockbuster business for those guys.
Oh, no, they totally, they bought a lot of houses. They bought like Miami condominiums, all this stuff. They just like filled in a lot of gaps that like, because of all those, like Countrywide and, even worse kinds of like mortgage lenders, went under. Yeah, they came in and they just like cleaned up. Then, because they had a lot of money. They were able to survive. Things rebounded. So, yeah, they made a killing. I didn't read the article, but there was a headline about people who bought Lehman debt after the bankruptcy for literally pennies on the dollar. Yeah, they made out. Like they were able to hold it and like get through whatever processes, and
they didn't have enough assets, so yeah.
So moving on to there was an interesting study that came out which created, I believe, 2 or 3 different articles in the New England Journal of Medicine on aspirin.
Yeah.
Now, just to give you our standard disclaimer, we are not doctors. Do not listen to us for medical advice.
Or investing advice either, for that
or
matter.
anything, yeah. Except movie advice, because we have good taste. So aspirin apparently, so this was a study in, I believe, about like 14,000 or more healthy adults.
Okay.
And they were kind of testing to see if, a lot of people are just told to, hey, just take like a baby aspirin every day. It'll be good for you. It'll reduce your risk of this, that, and the other thing. Well, the data actually doesn't support this. Aspirin, for example, in terms of like all deaths, your risk increases by 14%. And it was statistically significant.
And what are the causes here?
It wasn't quite clear, but what they did show was, aspirin is supposed to especially be helpful for you with cardiovascular disease incidents. It basically did nothing. But there was a 38% increase in the risk of major hemorrhage.
That makes sense. It's a blood thinner.
Yeah, P of less than 0.001.
That's not how most people think about dying, like in a pool of blood, but that's how I'll probably end up going. And
why?
Because YOLO, that's why.
Oh, is this like a death ball thing? Why would you die?
Death ball doesn't
in a pool
exist
of
yet,
blood?
Max. I live fast and live hard. I roll deep.
Okay.
In general, do they break out if these patients, like if you have like diagnosed atherosclerosis, is it a good idea in that case, or is it just not a good idea in general?
Well, I think they enrolled healthy adults, so I think these people didn't have like major diagnoses.
Yeah, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. You should just not fuck with it.
Yeah, just don't take a medicine just because. I mean, and also with aspirin, it's pretty much been grandfathered because it's over 100 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there have been a good number of studies in it, but probably not to the level that we're used to in terms of large randomized controlled trials. But this was one of them, and yeah, it's showing that the current conventional wisdom about aspirin is probably wrong. So if you're healthy, you might want to think twice.
Yeah, it turns out some of the hippies were right, and you really shouldn't just mess with your body and keep it natural, man. And
take magic mushrooms.
Yeah, sure.
But LSD is not natural, although it comes from a fungus or something.
Okay, LSD is not natural; it's synthetic.
No, but it comes from wasn't it discovered from like ergot or something?
Yes, it's very similar to something present in ergot, but it is they changed like 10 atoms on it.
Is that a lot?
They changed it from the acid, which is lysergic acid, to the amide. They changed just like a little bit on it.
Okay.
To make it more potent. Yeah, it's what makes you go crazy if you eat bread infected with ergot.
Well, I don't know. Do you actually go crazy, or do you just have like these psychedelic symptoms that make you appear crazy?
Well, you have these psychedelic symptoms, and I mean the thing that's come up historically is all of a sudden, in the Dark Ages, like whole towns would just start dancing and acting crazy occasionally, having these manias, like these dancing manias they call them, and they had no idea why. And then like all of a sudden, like a day or two later, people would just kind of come to and drag themselves out of the gutter and go back home and start living their normal lives again. And there's a theory that it's because the baker in the town got some bad grain that was infected with ergot and then literally dosed everyone with their morning bread.
But they were all dancing without music, which probably would be especially funny looking.
Yes, I'm sure it was very funny looking. Yeah, don't mess around with this stuff, kids. Don't mess around with ergot. It'll kill you. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that will just like straight up kill you.
Do people mess around with ergot?
I'm just warning, like, the teenagers that listen to the podcast. Like, whoa, like LSD comes from mold, bread mold. Yeah, don't mess around, man. Don't mess around with that stuff.
Yes, and don't mess around with trying to find magic mushrooms either, because apparently there's quite a few varieties of mushrooms that look exactly like it and can make you die a horrible, horrible death.
Yes. Don't just eat random mushrooms.
Yeah, don't eat random plants.
Don't snort random white powder.
Yeah, definitely don't do that.
There's some kids that snorted lye one time because they found their parents' quote-unquote stash, and it was just lye. They're cleaning the bathtub.
Created a chemical burn in their nose?
Yeah, they freaking died.
Oh my God.
It's horrible. It's like powdered Drano up your nose.
Ugh.
Yeah, so teenagers, there's a reason why everyone thinks you're dumb. Don't be dumb.
Don't snort lye.
Yeah, don't smoke oregano.
Well, nothing will happen to you.
Yeah, nothing happens in that case. It doesn't kill
It's
you.
actually it's literally grass. Gently regarded as safe.
Okay, I got you. All right, kids.
Okay.
Yeah, what's up next?
So we got the you pointed out this study about survival differences based on your insurance status if you have follicular lymphoma.
Yep.
So that was an interesting study. It was in the Blood Journal, and let's see, they had like 40-something thousand patients.
I know.
So it's a huge study, and it showed that if you have private insurance, the Kaplan-Meier's separate pretty distinctly. And what's interesting is that no insurance had the same survival curve as Medicare.
And Medicaid, I think.
Yeah, right? And Medicaid.
Or at least they're pretty close. They're pretty darn close. I think there was some difference between no insurance and Medicaid.
Well, this is for the under 65 folks.
Yes, for the under 65 group.
Yeah.
So.
And what also was interesting, but I don't know what the ends were here, was that people of non-Caucasian race ethnicity actually had slightly better survival. Not necessarily significant, but
yep.
People who had comorbidities, they had much worse survival anyway.
Just to talk about the Caucasian, non-Caucasian thing, This is actually somewhat interesting to me, and I'd like to know more of the sort of background to this, because it was my impression that although most hematological malignancies are rarer in non-Caucasians, that it tended to be more severe when they actually had them. And so you'll see this a lot of times if you look at the differences in cancer rates between, say, Western countries and countries in Asia. You'll see there's very few, lymphomas and leukemias and stuff like that, but they tend to be have a higher mortality rate.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So probably a lot of it is just on, social status.
It's true.
You're probably eating poorly. McDonald's is not exactly the.
Don't just say people on Medicaid eat at McDonald's, Max.
Oh, but they're more likely to, because it's really it's amazingly cheap, that food.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you go get a Happy Meal for your kids, it's like $3 or something. And that's a meal. I mean, you go like to anywhere else, like all the yuppie places that we have in like New York here, you're paying like $13 for a lunch.
Yeah.
Normal people can't afford that.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So there is a sort of selection bias going on here, where people who have private insurance probably can, have more resources in general.
But this doesn't, bode well for Medicare for all if Medicare kind of kills you.
Yeah, well, I like to see more data on all this sort of stuff too. And even in the over 65 group, there was a difference between Medicare and private insurance. And I think in that case, the sort of spread of people's wealth and means tends to be a lot tighter. A lot of people switch over from private insurance to Medicare when they hit 65.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it. Like, if you had supplemental insurance, if you're considered private.
I don't know.
But yeah, the spread was thinner. So in the under 65 group, like if you had Medicaid, you had an 83. The risk of you dying was like 83% higher. It was only 28% for Medicare in the over 65 group.
All very interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, we love data.
Love data.
So I don't know. Maybe we should talk about like Tilray.
Oh, we were going to talk about Tilray?
Why not?
Yeah, so we're recording this Tilray, and the nonsense that is Tilray happened yesterday. And even today, most of the biggest movers on the market, it's all cannabis something.
Yeah.
Over again. It's just like the same thing's happening. Like, everyone's going cannabis crazy.
I mean, there was one company I saw, I forgot which one it was. They signed a deal just to get like endocannabinoid targets, and they went up 60%.
Yeah, it was Corbus. Yeah. It's just, they're kind of a cannabinoid company to start off with, and for like $250,000, they bought like a whole suite of different compounds, different cannabinoids, and they were up 50%.
Oh, I think it was 60% when
60% when you checked it? Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. And like Tilray, they don't have really huge revenues, but I think at one point yesterday they were a $24 billion company.
Yes, they were. Oh. And it wasn't even at their peak either, if I remember correctly. And it's just watching it yesterday was kind of interesting, because I don't know how many circuit breakers they hit. Like 4, 5 circuit breakers. I lost count. It would just open up and hit another circuit breaker.
Yeah, it's like all the Bitcoin people went into weed.
That is totally believable from the people that I've known that have invested in Bitcoin. Yeah.
But
it's totally believable. And maybe they're geniuses, because somebody's making tons of money on this stuff. Somebody just made like $1 million on Tilray.
Oh, Peter Thiel, he owns he has a fund that owns like 76% of it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, Peter Thiel is just an amazing person. I mean, he got PayPal, Facebook, now he is obviously in weed stocks. He has a magic mushroom company, Compass Pathways, that's doing a study in phase 2B that we mentioned before. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, he's like, just do what he wants now. I mean, soon he's going to do the seasteading thing for real.
That's illegal. You know that, right?
What, seasteading?
Yeah, there's a UN convention against it.
That's just the UN. UN's not like a actual
Yeah, but I think that most countries like adopt because they don't want like their citizens to go be like, "Hey, fuck you! I'm my own country now." Sealand is the only one that can kind of get away with that because of history and like the ambivalence of the British.
Wait. Who can get away with it?
Sealand, you don't know about Sealand?
No.
Yeah, they are a quote unquote country that is on an abandoned oil platform in the English Channel.
That's not a country.
They're actually making some money right now, I believe, like hosting like WikiLeaks and that sort of stuff. I don't know if they actually host WikiLeaks. There was a talk about that at one point, or maybe Pirates Bay. They like running servers for what do you call it? Companies that are probably illegal, or at least bad relationship with the law.
So anyway, I mean, that's all I got.
All right, that's it for me too.
Hey, thanks, guys, and don't forget to subscribe and to review us on iTunes.
All right, see you next week.
Bye.
Our theme music is by Hazar.